now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at ScoopB. He is the one and only Brandon Robinson. Talk a little Sixers, talk to Michael Jordan, The Last Dance documentary, and more here on 97.3 ESPN. Brandon, how you doing on this Friday?
Man, happy Friday. I'm doing good. How you doing?
We're doing pretty good. You know, I was telling you off the air, I think we're all, fortunate that we have what we have. And listen, there's still stuff going on in the world around us when it comes to basketball, especially with this Jordan documentary. But we got to start with the Sixers because, this week, Elton Brand, he came out and he wasn't 100% committal to a lot of things on that conference call. And one of them had to do with Ben Simmons. They asked him about the ESPN article. He kind of didn't really give the greatest answer in the world. They asked him about his health situation. He wasn't really definitive in his answer. So what is your perspective on Ben Simmons and the 76ers right now?
Well, I think the Sixers definitely are in a situation where there were many people that had expectations. Many pundits thought that the Sixers, would make an NBA Finals appearance. And, we're in a hiatus right now because of the pandemic, but at the same time, fifth or sixth place, Milwaukee's running things right now. I can see why Sixers fans could be disappointed at what's going on. But they're on the inside of the bracket of the top 8 team in the Eastern Conference and not at the bottom. But I think injuries has played a big part into why the Sixers have struggled this season. You've had Joel Embiid that's dealt with issues. You've had Ben Simmons dealing with back issues. You've had at times, Korkmaz has been playing well as a spark plug off the bench. You made the trade. You brought Glenn Robinson III. He was impressive to me going into, right before we took this break. And, I think Brett Brown has a good roster on his squad. I think it's just a matter of everybody being healthy and being on the same page. And I think that this pandemic, if we return back to basketball, will give Ben Simmons some type of motivation to play for. I can understand, the reasons why, Elton has been non-committal about him. But at the same time, I just think that the Sixers are really taking inventory about, what the process is moving forward. We've talked about the process for years. The process is here. I don't know if I don't know what else you want. I mean, the process should equal a championship. Sand makes diamonds in a clamshell. And, this is supposed to be the diamond season. So, Milwaukee may be standing in that way. We'll see.
Scoop, how this roster is built for me is a massive issue. The Sixers, I'm going to try and give an analogy. The Sixers feel like a guy that's very indecisive and is afraid of commitment in a relationship. Like, you have the process team with Rocco and Saric and TJ McConnell, and they get rid of all of them. And they download Tinder and they trade for Jimmy Butler. Then they delete Tinder and get rid of Jimmy Butler. Then they go on Plenty of Fish and acquire Al Horford, the older veteran. And none of the pieces make any sense, is my point. And who are they building around? And does this roster even fit in your mind?
Listen, man, you gave a lot of thought to that analogy. I hope you have that written down.
I do.
I would be willing to say that Al Horford is the Cougar.
Oh, okay.
In this instance, yeah. I think that Al Horford, they overpaid for, expecting that he would be that mentor or that big man with veteran experience, playoff experience, that will play alongside Joel Embiid. You often get those visions of when the Sixers lost in the playoffs to the Raptors and Joel Embiid went into the locker room crying. You're like, okay, what can we do to make this situation better? You bring in Horford. But the gag in the whole thing is you basically, as you kind of alluded to in your analogy, I'm going to need you to send me that because I think that's just brilliant. But you literally, like you said, you left Jimmy Butler and J.J. Redick at the altar, and you brought in Al Horford. They had to make a choice, and they settled on Tobias Harris and Al Horford instead. And I think this is a situation where you thought that bringing in Tobias Harris and Al Horford was going to make up for the defensive prowess of Jimmy Butler, who to me is one of the most blue-collar two-way players that you have in the NBA. And literally, he's living his best life in Miami. And I think when you look at the Sixers right now, they're missing those things. And one of the things that I think the Sixers are legitimately missing, and I saw it in the playoffs last season, was how Jimmy Butler was able to play that Scottie Pippen point forward role for the Sixers last season. It's so cool that you can use Last Dance analogies, and everybody and their mama and their mama's mama gets it now. But he was able to play that point forward role and slide Ben Simmons off the ball. You know, we often talk about his jump shooting ability or lack thereof. We're talking about Ben Simmons. He was able to get to the basket and then get any shot he wanted. You're often depending on Ben Simmons to play on the ball and to distribute, but the thing is, he can score. It kind of reminds me of how when the Sixers brought in Eric Snow to shoulder the load for Allen Iverson to be the scorer that he can be. To me, Philadelphia should some way consider doing the same thing that Philly did with Iverson years ago. Maybe get Ben Simmons off the ball more and not always depend on him so much to distribute because you give up scoring. We know he can't shoot a jumper, and that's fine. You don't have to shoot three-pointers as a point guard to win championships. You do have to distribute the ball, score, and do more. So I think if he can get to the basket and take your defender's best point guard off the dribble or shift him to the two guard, you maybe be able to get more of a superfluous amount of things, going with him. But I also think, there have been rumors about, moves. I wrote a piece at Heavy.com the other day where I spoke with Rashad Phillips on my podcast, ScoopB Radio, and he proposed a situation where, the Toronto Raptors are looking to make moves to move up in the draft to potentially get LaMelo Ball. In that trade scenario mentioned on my podcast by Rashad Phillips, he mentioned the scenario where Ben Simmons could potentially be shipped to Golden State. And in turn, Kyle Lowry heads over to Philadelphia, Cardinal Doherty alum there. And, Melo moves up, up the trade wire, up the draft wire. And, there have been talks there. But, nothing official said by the Sixers. And, I think at the end of the day, though, I think the Sixers, if they want to be successful, I think that Ben Simmons could slide into a two-guard position. I think that would help them.
Scoop, who's this team built around right now, and who should this team build around for the future, if you have to pick between the two?
I think that's a question that everybody in Philly is asking. Me being an alum of Eastern University and working downtown, I have the pulse of the city from the man on the street all the way up into the executive suite. And the thing that I find that's interesting is I think that everybody says different things. Why can't it be both of their teams? I think that the Sixers are a dream when you have a point guard who is a 6'10" point guard that can distribute the ball but also get to the basket, as I was saying before. But you also have a Joel Embiid legitimately who has Hakeem Olajuwon footwork and is an updated version of Chris Webber. That's a dream, a coach's dream. I think when we're talking about crazy third world issues and pandemics, the fact that you have the luxury of a Joel Embiid and a Ben Simmons on your roster is truly just that, a luxury. I just think that you need to add fixins to that equation to make that happen. And I think that, again, the trade that Philly made to bring in Glenn Robinson III, I thought that was applicable. I spoke to Glenn back in February about just his role with that team, and he said that he learned a lot, being around that Warriors team with Draymond Green. And he talked about how much Draymond reminds him of Magic Johnson, not just the fact that he's a tall hybrid forward, but the fact that, his basketball IQ is at a high level. And he said that he was taking those things that he learned from the Warriors and was applying those things to Philly. And, I think if we can ever get this season really legitimately started, I think that they can do some damage, not just with Glenn Robinson III, but with Embiid, with Simmons. I think the time is now, and, they got to figure some things out, man. I think to just write them off as, they're not going to win anything and this is the end, I think that's pessimistic thinking. Because, like I said, the pundits were saying that the Sixers had the chance to make it. I think in an era where we just play positionless basketball, I think the Sixers have what it takes, particularly with those two stars that I mentioned, but the other guys got to step it up. You know, I even think if they have any, I don't know their roster situation. If they're able to bring in a speedy guard, you know, I'm always pull for a certain shooting guard that's sitting at home right now. I'm not gonna say their name because I read the YouTube comments; they go crazy. Hey, y'all! But I do think that if you bring in some type of speedy guard to help that situation, you know, running their offense in the half court, and spelling Ben Simmons in some crucial minutes, I think minutes balancing with everybody could make them a competitive a team. You know, as I mentioned, Al Horford may be the cougar, as we mentioned, but at the same time, he has a wealth of playoff experience that he can help this semi-young team and be successful.
Brandon Robinson joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at ScoopB. Brandon, we'd be remiss if we didn't get to talk a little bit about the Jordan Last Dance documentary again this Sunday, the next 2 episodes. And for me, one of the biggest things that has stood out to me watching this is, you know, I don't think people fully visualize, unless you were older and you saw Jordan originally, but now the younger people finally get to see that all the stuff you see, Kobe, LeBron, all the great players today doing, Jordan was doing it way before those guys ever came along. The fadeaway jumpers, the blocking shots at the rim as a perimeter guy, playing elite defense, you know, taking the ball to the basket, dunking over people. Jordan literally set the groundwork for the entire way the game is played today. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've taken away from this Last Dance, is now people finally get to see where all of this came from.
For sure, and I'll add this. I'm thankful that I was able to watch Michael, not just as a fan, but also as a actual member of the media. Although I'm new to some people, I've been in the industry since the 1997-98 season when I was a 12-year-old kid. You do the math. I'll be 35 at the end of this month. And I had the chance to actually cover the vintage jersey Nets and, you know, spend time with Michael and Dennis and Scotty in the locker room. And when you want to talk about a locker room that's electric, you feel like the Beatles are there, sir. I think that those Beatles may have been beat by the star power that was the Bulls. The way they walked, the way they talked, the way that they dressed, the way that they carried themselves. I've told this story on other radio shows. I spent some time in the Nets locker room, the visitors' locker room with Dennis Rodman. And when you go into the locker room, they have like this squeaky door that opens. It needed WD-40. It was just like an old hockey locker room. And when you walk into the locker room, the TV, there was a TV, like one of those TVs that you had in school when it was a rain delay or rain day, and they wheeled in the TV back in the day. You went in the room, and Dennis Rodman was sitting in a folding chair, Indian style, with pajama pants on, with ankle socks with balls on it. And he had headphones on, and he was locked in. He was studying tape of Jason Williams, who was battling him for the top rebounder in the NBA at that point. And that Dennis was locked in and was scared that he's getting his just due, because as much as he was an enigma of a lot of things, he was serious about his craft. He was just different. You know, at that time, Scotty was dealing with contract issues. And then you look in the other room, and Michael was in there. Got a chance to talk to Michael. Got a chance to, you know, talk to Phil and the late Tex Winter. God rest his soul. That Bulls team, to me, to kind of see what it took for them to be successful, the focus it took, it's a pleasure to see. Scott Burrell played on that, was on my podcast, ScoopB Radio, and he talked about just how, you know, the standard of excellence that Michael Jordan had, and it spilled off into everyone on that team. And, you know, I'm glad that people are able to see it in real time, but like you said, Michael was the standard, and I think what gets lost in translation, if it wasn't for Michael and Air Jordans, Kobe and LeBron James would not have the massive sneaker deals that they have today and the creative control. And I'll add this, Kobe Bryant and his sneaker collection, and how he went about his whole process is the reason why Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant have the flexibility and the luxury that they have, and how they attract these young kids with Nike and their sneakers. So a lot of credit should go to Michael. Penny Hardaway was a pioneer as well. And so was Scottie Pippen in the way that point forward role, as I discussed Jimmy Butler last season with the Sixers, next alongside Ben Simmons, was a thing. So yeah, man, I'm excited for episodes 7 and 8, and you'll be seeing some Birmingham Barons stuff. So it'll be interesting.
And let's not forget, we got to give credit to Mama Jordan as well, because she's the one that got Michael to go on the plane to go to the Nike meeting, because Michael wanted Adidas and not Nike. So that's a whole nother level of thanks going on there as well.
For sure. And I'll add this. I talked to Magic Johnson a few months ago. He told me that one of his biggest regrets, and shout out to Miss Dolores Jordan as well, but Magic Johnson told me that Nike approached him years ago and told him that they couldn't give him a massive contract, but they would give him stock options. And that's one of his biggest regrets. He can't walk past the Nike store. Of course, he wore the Converse weapons, legendary shoe. But Nike, and Michael Jordan definitely go hand in hand like peanut butter and jelly, ham and burger, and Kool-Aid with sugar. So, I definitely think that this documentary is something for young folks to kind of see. And I think the synergistic part of it is, in the wake of Kobe Bryant's untimely death, everybody trying to decide whether Michael Jordan and LeBron are equals and more. You really just get to sit back and see what it took. Next week, Ira Antelis, who produced the Like Mike Gatorade commercial or Gatorade song for Michael, he will appear on the ScoopB Radio podcast next week and talk just about the process of creating it. I don't know if you know this, but originally Michael was going to come out to the Jungle Book, I Want to Be Like You, and they nixed it. And basically they went to an ad agency, they went through Ira's team, and basically they had to produce that song in a weekend. And it's one of the most monumental songs of our lifetime. They're remixing it with Zion Williamson and Jason Tatum. So, another life is there. But yeah, Michael was a marketing genius. He had help, and it's a joy to see my childhood in real time and to connect with younger people and older people.
Again, that's ScoopBRadio.com, the podcast. Follow Scoop on Twitter at ScoopB. Brandon Robinson, like all guests, appeared today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. My friend, thank you again so much for jumping on, and take care of yourself.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to be myself.